Good evening and welcome to Town Hall. We are live for our election coverage 2023. Alongside Mike Watson, I am Paul Santos. Welcome in. As usual, we'll have the results of our town election this year, and a very interesting year, especially when it comes to school committee, because that is the big contested race this year. We have one incumbent and 4 challengers. The top 2 get in, and that's the race that we're going to be talking about tonight. So first of all, Mike, great to see you again, sir.
Good to see you too, Paul.
Speaking of school committee, you have some background in schools.
A little bit, yeah.
Here's a guy who was a teacher, and then he became a principal at Voc, and now superintendent.
That's right.
Last couple of years.
Right.
So how are things going?
Very good, very good. Exciting work. Work with kids. It's kind of exciting to see so many people interested tonight in serving on our school committee. Schools are such an important part of the community, and so I look forward not only to talking about each of them, but also of our town people weighing in on who should serve.
Well, I haven't really heard too much about you, so that's a good thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
When you're
We're not here to talk about me tonight, Paul.
If we don't hear much about you, that means you must be doing all right over there.
I'll take that as a compliment.
That's right,
Thanks.
exactly. Well, it's great to have you here tonight, and we're going to be talking about the different races, but obviously the main race right here is school committee. Kathleen Amaral is the incumbent. The challengers are Eric Morency, Lynn Turner, Elizabeth Bess Coughlin, and Troy Tufano. And again, as we said, the top 2 get in tonight. Now, before we get to that, there you see it right there. As you can see, we do not have any results yet. 1 minute past 8 o'clock. It's all goose eggs up there.
We can ask the town clerk about that.
We are going to ask the town clerk about that. You can see that's actually the way it appeared on the ballot. Kathleen Amaral happens to have the letter A in her last name, but is also the incumbent, and then it's alphabetical order the rest of the way. And we'll chat a little bit about the different candidates. I had the honor of being here for the debate, so I got to watch the debate, listen to the candidates. Very, very informative, and hopefully that was helpful to the people in the town making the decision. Well, right now we have our first guest of the night, Mike. We have somebody's going to be first, and sitting right there in the hot seat is our town clerk, Sarah Haskell Aruda. Sarah, welcome to our show tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Well, a couple of quick questions. First of all, in the old days, you had these paper ballots and people counted them and all that. Of course, that's long gone. We have computers, but now you're talking about chips and you're talking about thumb drives and all this kind of thing, all this different kind of fancy language. Exactly how does this thing work? I know you put the little black square, actually circle. You get the little circle, you fill.
We just have a computer that is not online. It is not connected to the internet at all. And each person puts their ballot in at the polls, and then at the end of the night, our very, very important and very good poll workers who've worked a long day are able to close the machines for us. And so that machine is going to tally every ballot that went through. In addition to that piece, there are hand counts. So anything that couldn't be counted by the machine will be done old-fashioned way. You'll have 2 people that are going through and counting those by hand and putting them on a tally sheet. In addition, anything that is written in will also be hand counted. So the results you'll see tonight will only be an unofficial result. It'll be what that computer was able to tally for us today, and it'll tally it by race and by precinct.
Yeah, no, I think that's very interesting, Sarah. As far as turnout's concerned, any instincts on that? Any guts?
So the last time I went through to each of the precincts between 5 and 7, we had about a 14% turnout, which is pretty low, but it's right in the middle for a town election. So last year, we had that really important question about the Dartmouth Indian. There was a 25% turnout. The year prior, there was a 7% turnout. So this is kind of middle of the road.
Yeah, Paul, I think turnout's always an important thing for us to talk about, right? We want to have all of our residents participate in our election. This year, I think, we were really fortunate enough to have 5 townspeople dedicated to working and to improve our schools to put their name out. So that's a really exciting piece. For a long time, I've talked about the need for competitive races in town politics, right? So that voters have a choice on who would represent them. So I want to first commend the 5 folks who ran for the school committee tonight, because I think it's really important when 5 people are willing to give up time, campaign for seats inside of our school committee, and to put their name out there for their friends and families and townspeople to cast a vote on who best represent them. So, 14%, it'd be interesting if that was the number that came back, and I've certainly seen elections where that's far less. And I think that it's indicative of the fact that folks are concerned about public education, concerned about our schools, and so I'd be really looking forward to what that number represents when we get the votes in tonight to see how many people participated in that process.
It should be much higher because we're looking at, an 87% turnout for state elections like the president and these local elections. This impacts your children directly, and a number of these other offices impact your day-to-day life. So the fact that we're only coming out at 14 or 25% is really low, and there are just so many ways to vote now. You can vote in person, you can vote by mail, so there's not really a good reason that we aren't voting. But I also commend people for coming out. I've run contested. It's not easy. And they're going into a 3-year term for a volunteer position. They will not be compensated in any way, and they're going to invest a lot of time. And running, all of these candidates have invested a lot of time with holding signs, putting signs out, door knocking, all of the many things that go into campaigning, all because they really, really care about the town.
I think you alluded to it before, how the machines count the ballots, but then there's also, as you said, absentee ballots that have to be counted. There's voting by mail. So how does that work in a town election here?
So we took all of the absentee and the vote by mail had to be in by 8 o'clock tonight. Literally, one of my staff members was outside checking the bin at 8 o'clock. And then those are all dispersed to the separate precincts. So throughout the day, we've been giving them to the precincts, and they're, again, running them through those machines. So those will be pretty close to accurate by the end of the evening. What you'll be waiting on for a couple days are just those that either had to be hand counted or had write-ins. But
a very tiny percentage.
It's a very tiny percentage. Since I've been here, I haven't seen the write-ins or the hand count change the outcome. So our unofficial result is quite accurate.
I got the $64,000 question. How long is it going to be before we get the results, do you think?
I think you're going to be pretty close. Between 8:30 and 9, you're going to have those results. So we're lucky enough that we have officers. So we have one officer that's headed up north. So as those precincts close, they're collecting those chips for us to bring back, and we have another officer going to all the south precincts. So we try to expedite it. We know people are on the edge of their seat, and those of us that have been working all day, we would love to see what it's like to be at home too. So we are trying to get it wrapped up also. So, and people want the results quickly.
Because of our location, are we going to get the town hall precinct first?
Yes, generally.
Okay.
Yep.
That's generally
it
what
may
happens.
be in my office as we're speaking.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we should let her go so we can get the results.
Yeah.
We're going to make sure DCTV has them as soon as they come in. They will be right up to the minute for you.
Hey, well, Sarah, thank you very much for stopping by. I know you started early this morning, like 5 o'clock or something
Yep,
like that?
I was here at 5.
5 o'clock in the morning, so hopefully you had a couple of cups of coffee this morning, and we'll have the results. Thank you very much for stopping by.
Thank
Real
you for
shout
your
out
time.
to all the poll workers. You're
Absolutely.
right. They were there all day.
They've been there all day also dealing with the public and ensuring that everything goes smoothly. They are absolutely the heroes.
Great
All
job.
right. Sarah Haskell-Aruda, our town clerk, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Always the first guest every year here on our election results show that we have here on Dartmouth Community Media. All right, let's get back to that graphic for a moment. We can kind of run down the candidates here tonight, starting with Kathleen Amaral. She has been on the school committee since 2017, kind of prioritized advocacy for special needs students and engagement between schools and families. She also serves on the school district Special Education Parent Advisory Council. So she's the veteran on the list there tonight. And always certainly a little bit of an advantage to be the incumbent, right? Unless something's happened that, you irritated people in the town or something like that. But generally, if you're an incumbent, right, is there an advantage still with incumbency, do you think?
So, Paul, I think how the audience to that is obviously ballot placement it would be what most folks would consider to be the advantage, right? In Kathleen's case, she would have been at the top of the ballot anyway with the A. But I think most folks who would look at an election results would indicate that being first on the ballot is generally an advantage of sorts. But, with that, you run the risk as the incumbent is you're the one that has the voting record. So having been someone who served in the town in a couple of capacities, running your first race, you're able to talk pretty freely about what issues you think need to be governed or supported by you as an eventual candidate. But when you run for your second time, in case of Kathleen as an incumbent or other folks, you have a voting record to run on. And what folks learn very quickly in service is what you campaign on and what you end up having to decide as a governing person are oftentimes difficult. Those things don't work as clearly. The average person, when they get involved, runs because their heart is in the right place. They have a goal. They have things they'd like to see change. And what they often realize is in the throes of governing, those ideals often conflict with some of the realities or the challenges faced as you, especially in a town like Dartmouth, where you try to work across lots of different municipal layers. So it's an advantage, I think, in terms of ballot placement. I think some of the disadvantages may be that you have to take different positions in your second and subsequent runs for office compared to your first one.
Now, the flip side of that, I would imagine, is that if you served on the committee like Kathleen Amaral has for a number of years, she knows the job. She has a lot of information at her fingertips that maybe a challenger doesn't have. What about that? Is that something that the incumbent can use to their advantage?
Sure. I think in those conversations, right, you certainly come in with 3 years of experience. And so you have some background in terms of how the budgeting process has worked, what the role of the school committee plays in the budgeting process. So that is certainly a huge advantage for the incumbent. And depending upon the format of the exchange with the challengers, it may be an opportunity that you can discuss some of the differences amongst people.
All right, we're going to talk about the challengers. You see them there: Bess Coughlin, Erica Morency, Troy Tufano, and Lynn Turner as we proceed through the night. But we're asking the candidates if you have a chance to come on by Town Hall to chat with us, to speak directly to the constituents about how things went this evening. We certainly encourage you to do that. And a gentleman who's here right now is one of the challengers for a school committee, and we had a chance to chat with him during the debate that we had here at Town Hall. It is Troy Tufano. Troy, thank you very much for stopping by.
I appreciate you having me here, and after those numbers, that I'm in the back of the pack, so yay.
Well, let me start in.
Looking forward to the rest of the results. It's only 1 of 9, so.
Right.
Ready to go.
The top 2 get in, so obviously that's helpful that you got 2 of the people on the ballot will get in. So let me ask you a question. I was here during the town forum, and one of the moments in the evening that seemed to generate most of the audience response was your position when you just kind of put your hand on the table and said, under no circumstances should books be banned, and you bang the table, and the next thing you know, people are cheering and everything like that. And I was like, okay, that's obviously making your statement right there. So tell me about that. That is something that you feel strongly about. What is your position, and why do you feel so strongly about it?
I'm adamantly against banning books. There's no reason for it. There's no cause for it. Libraries have existed for years, and it's a parent's job to instill in a child what they feel is right and wrong, and for them to watch what's going on with their child. It is never my responsibility to control that for another person's child. It's not my right. Just because I don't deem a book proper or necessary, I don't have to ban it. Then my kid just won't read it. When we go to the library, it's a very simple structure where my kids look for books, they ask if they can take it out, and I say yes or no. It's really simple. No need to ban anything. Books are not bad, they're books. They have no specific, they're written with ideas, fiction, nonfiction, all kinds of different categories, and there's absolutely no reason to ban a book.
All right, let me just jump in here because we do have 1 precinct reporting here. This is Precinct 5. And we have Kathleen Amaral with 218 votes. We have Erica Morency with 116, Elizabeth Coughlin 115, Lynn Turner 103, and Troy Tufano with 78. Again, that's 1 precinct reporting. Precinct 5, which I understand is the location right here, so it's always the first one to come in because that's where we are. We're right here at Town Hall. So that's 1 of 9 precincts reporting, and we'll continue to report as the night goes along. So in addition to the book thing, is there another issue or another reason why you decided to run for school committee this time around?
Oh, there's multiple reasons. I support the increase in pay and better benefits for our teachers. There's been a lot of different things considered, and I think as we're considering the different possible options, stabilization funds and whatnot, I think it's important to have the budget override pass for this time, because something needs to be done to be able to retain our TAs, our teachers, all of our staff. And that's the quickest result quickest way to a positive result to be able to retain the great system that we currently have without losing too many. Working at Quinn Elementary, I have seen great staff leave. Unfortunately, it's a difficult thing to see happen. I don't like that. My other major issue is population growth in the town, which was surprised that nobody else brought that up. But so our population is growing exponentially. I know, as both of you know, you can see that with the numbers, with the census and everything that's coming through. The increase in size and new developments, we've got the large development going in where Dartmouth Tennis is. There's the unit where Target is. There's another one back behind the Harley-Davidson. So there's a bunch of new stuff coming in. Most of our schools are at or above capacity for their limits. Every school needs work to be done. So we need to look at, is it feasible to do the work and still be able to house the kids in the facilities that we have? Or do we need to look at expanding? What options are there for expanding? I can speak from Quinn, where I can tell you that the expandable area, for the most part, is all leased land to groups like DGAL and stuff like that, and you can't break a lease like that to build an addition onto a building. So definitely need to do some feasibility studies and whatnot on what would be best with the population growth, because that doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon.
Let's see if Mike has a question for you.
So, yeah, some questions. First of all, Troy, I appreciate you bringing some of the issues to the forefront. In my view, the budgetary issues will be the biggest that face the Dartmouth Public Schools over the next 3 to 5 years. I know there's been a lot of talk. Paul mentioned the books. There's been talks around the Indian logo, and there's been a lot of things that have galvanized a lot of movements. The budgetary issues are going to be very real in suburban communities like Dartmouth across the Commonwealth over the next 2 to 3 years. And I think there'll be a lot of competing views. I actually said to Paul before we came on and told him that when we're here in a year, we can talk about the fact of the projection going forward, because funding's going to be an issue, and the town's going to need to make a determination. Townspeople got to make a determination about what that should look like. Several issues that you raised that I think are worthy of us talking about tonight are buildings, salaries, right? Those kinds of things are at the heart of all school districts. And I think those are the real questions for the members who are going to seek school committee seats both this year and in the subsequent years for this community. And so, if nothing else, to those people watching at home, I hope that we continue to see fields of residents who are interested in serving their town as school committee members, like we saw this year, which I commend you and the others for stepping up. And those that don't win tonight, I hope they'll consider serving again. And that we're very clear with our soon-to-be elected leaders about what their positions are on some of these issues, because those folks that are sitting at home tonight, they know that the school buildings that exist here are old. They know that there will be a debate about health insurance rates and teacher salaries and aide salaries. Those debates are happening everywhere. And so those choices are going to have to be made. And I think understanding the MSBA process is one piece. Understanding the impact on residents who are at home and want to protect their money to the best of their capacity is another. These are very difficult issues. And in my opinion, I appreciate you tonight bringing them to the forefront, because I think that they're ones that are going to have to be discussed by residents. So my question, I heard you mention things like the stabilization fund, which was near and dear to my heart a decade ago as we tried to build those. So I'm curious what the position would be. My biggest worry, and I hear a lot of this, is, and this is, again, my opinion, and that's why they bring me here, Paul, so
Yes,
I'm allowed to
that's true.
do that. It's one of the few times in my space I can actually
And
share
your
it.
opinion has no negative effect on
It
your
has no negative
candidacy,
effect
because
on
you're
anything.
not
I
a
don't have a
candidate.
vote in any of the process. The issue with the stabilization fund is the town meeting appropriates money to that every single year. And I know that there are folks at the town meeting and community members at large that would rail against using stabilization fund monies for recurring expenses. It is a one-time savings versus the ability to fund recurring expenses. So I'm curious what your thoughts are around the use of stabilization fund money in order to fund some of those recurring expenses you outlined.
So my feeling is we need to look into something. As you brought up, it's going to be a huge issue, not just now, but for years to come. You can't run a budget override every year. You can't apply for grants and expect to have them come in every year. That's not a guarantee. These are all not guarantees. Stabilization funds, I would say, based even on the name, they're more stable. They're more consistent with the revenues coming in to the town, would be more reliable, not necessarily approved or liked by everybody. But we can't have the other things that I mentioned, like population growth, improvement in schools, and the buildings themselves, without some sort of stable ability to increase budgets and spending. Otherwise, we're just not going to keep up. And this is a this is a tight spot, but it's I almost wonder if we should look at the feasibility for Proposition 2.5 for our town. I almost wonder if it's time.
So again, I'll just add to that, Troy. Difficult conversations, not my place to say one way or the other. Proposition 2.5 overrides are not all that successful across the Commonwealth, but I want to publicly commend you for even raising it, right? Because I think at the end of the day, the question that will come for all school committee members is going to be one way or the other. And it's not me, I'm not taking a position on that, I don't need to. That's what you guys are going to need to make determinations on, because stabilization funds are one-time sources of revenue, which means they can't sustain things like teacher raises or health insurance benefits, because once you spend that money, it's gone. It's like if I won $20,000 on a lottery ticket, once I spend it, I would need to win another $20,000 in order to be able to keep that expense going, right? So the challenge will be either reallocating resources from existing town functions, which could permanently sustain those operations, or going to voters to ask for an override.
Right.
That is the choice that will be there. And that is not going to be an easy choice for you or any of the other members of the Select Board or Finance Committee if they need to make it over the next year. And I just think it's really important that folks understand what the issue is, regardless of their position on that.
Now, before we let you go on a lighter issue, you realize that you're known as the guy who gives the update on the weather down at Round Hill Beach.
That's a really important job, by
Round
the way.
Hill
I
Beach
look for that
reports,
all the
yes.
time.
I tell you, my wife is a big fan of Round Hill Beach, so
too.
to get the update as to what the weather is down there, that's not a bad thing
Bottom
to
line is,
mention.
I'm looking at Troy Tufano every single morning I'm home in the summer, because I know.
And I know you are too, because I see you at Round Hill on a
I'm
regular
there,
basis.
and
You're
on
there.
those days
You're there.
where I get a report at 80 degrees and sunshine by 9 a.m.,
You're there.
I'm automatically thinking this is a Round Hill Beach day.
Round Hill Beach Day. Well, the question kept coming up as admin of Dartmouth Helping Dartmouth. The question came up every summer day. Anybody know what the weather's like at Round Hill? Anybody know what the weather's like at Round Hill? In being such a large municipality, I believe we're the third largest in the state in area, the weather can vary. Round Hill can be 60 degrees, cloudy,
That's
and
right.
even a drizzle. But if you go up north, even as far north as Hicksville, or even more around New Bedford Country Club where I live, it could be 90 degrees and blazing hot.
Yeah, just from Bobardigansett to
Yeah.
Round Hill can be a big difference.
Exactly, exactly. So a lot of people want to know, am I bringing a sweater to the beach? Or am I going to actually be able to enjoy the beach?
You don't get paid for that job, but, I think you ought to keep that going. I think that's a good thing.
Oh, I do want to keep it going, and I love Round Hill.
Right.
I'm there enough, as you know.
Hey,
so.
it's a great place for our town. Hey, Troy, good luck tonight. Thank you very much for stopping by, and hey, thanks for running for school committee, as pointed out here by Mike Watson. Anybody that puts the hat in the ring, regardless of the outcome, should be commended. Thanks very much.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thanks, Troy.
All right, Troy Tufano, one of the candidates for school committee tonight. Okay, let's get back to that list that's up on the screen. As you can see, the incumbent Kathleen Amaral leading after one precinct is in, precinct 5 in, with the 218, with Coughlin at 115, Morency 116, Lynn Turner 103, and Troy Tufano 78. Erica Morency, the second name, well, actually, let's go with Coughlin next. Elizabeth Coughlin, who's next listed on the ballot with 115 votes here tonight. She is somebody that obviously is, wants to get her voice out there and wants to, make her voice heard. Spent 20 years, worked 20 years at Sylvain Nursery. She's a graduate of Temple University, and she's also a town meeting member, and she would like to be elected to school committee tonight. Another good candidate out of the good 5 that we have.
Yeah, no, I can't stress enough how important it is to see interested residents looking to serve on committees. When we voted tonight, it would have been great to see competitive races really up and down. I was thankful for that. A lot of people probably enjoy showing up to see their name alone on the ballot and know they're going to get back in. I liked in both of my races to have competition because it shows that people are interested, want to challenge my views, our views, and I think that's so important for the townspeople. And so I was really excited to see that to happen tonight for the school committee.
Well, we have people of different backgrounds. We have Ms. Morency. She works as a fitness coach, specializes in health, weight loss, and nutrition programs. She is somebody that, one of her top priorities has to do with maximizing the grant opportunities for the school district and to continue to affirm the high school's Indian name and logo. We spoke to Ms. Tufano over here, or Mr. Tufano, who works as a political consultant. And, of course, we talked about Ms. Coughlin. And we also talked about the incumbent, and the incumbent is sitting in our interview seat right now. We welcome Kathleen Amaral. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Welcome. First name on the ballot, the incumbent, and I was looking back and I saw that you've been on the school committee since 2017, so obviously we always like to say, where did the time go? How do you feel about your years on the school committee, and what do you think has been some of the top accomplishments that you've had during your time?
Yeah, it's just unbelievable that this would, pending the votes, could be my 3rd term, and the time has really flown by. I've been asked about accomplishments, and it's hard to really state what I feel. I feel like the committee works as a group to kind of come to consensus, and so I know we've done some good work together, and we've experienced in the last 3 years some really difficult and challenging decisions to make. But I think about the accomplishments during my tenure. We really ramped up, and we still some work to be done. Supports for students' social and emotional well-being. I think that's really important. I see that as fundamental to helping students learn, is really tackling and getting to know them and what they need in order to access the curriculum. I think that's critical. We've done some, COVID has sort of put a damper on a lot of things, but some improvements around the Memorial Stadium. We've certainly ramped up our capacity in terms of technology, and I love to see when we were supportive of initiatives such as enhancing technology, and how we see that work throughout the district with students who might learn differently or challenge themselves or in a different way utilizing that technology, and seeing some creative things come out of them in their work, and just the ability to be a little bit more flexible in terms of utilizing that technology for homework and on Google, platforms and that sort of thing. So those are some of the things that we've done that I've contributed to. I certainly cannot take credit for any of it. I think we are a body that works together to make those decisions. But it's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah, so Kathleen, I think that's really powerful, and as somebody who works every day in that field, I agree with what you're putting forth. The social emotional health of our kids in a post-pandemic world is very real. I see it with my own children. I see it with their friends. And I think the emergence of technology in the classrooms is likely to be something that continues to stay with us. The challenge, of course, is to continue to focus on those initiatives as we look to set budget priorities for FY24 and beyond. And so I guess my question is, you're in a tough spot, for sure. How do you envision putting forth a budget that continues to address some of those post-pandemic needs while meeting the obligations and finances that are prevalent before the committee?
Yeah, we're in the thick of that right now, and we're really fortunate to have a great finance director, our assistant superintendent, acting superintendent, Mr. Kiley, who's very thoughtful and very knowledgeable, and is very strongly and clearly describes our budget, right? to folks who, last week we were in front of the Finance Committee to do that, and he really did a great job to spell a lot of things out in terms of the value, the bang for our buck, so to speak. And, you know, we're in a tough time. I'm excited to see our new superintendent come in, and so a lot of the work that we do in terms of how we budget really starts from having a purpose, having that vision, having a strategic plan that aligns with access and equity and all the things that we want, social emotional well-being, what we want for our kids. We want our kids to thrive. We want them to be good humans. We want them to go on to live a life that is fulfilling and wonderful and something that they are, you know, go into careers that are meaningful to them. And that starts from, well, how do we get there? And breaking it down from, you know, it starts from the top, but then it goes from the bottom up to see what do we need in those schools, who are those kids in those schools, what are their needs, and having a firm and clear conviction around why that is important, and leading with that. And so I'm excited about our new superintendent, as I feel that what I've learned from her through the interview process is that she's going to bring a lot of her ability and her passion around identifying her why and really advocating for that. But also, I feel that she's got a skill set, and I'm excited to see how she might potentially shake things up. You're talking about, and you might ask me about other things that you were just talking about, and my thoughts on those. But I'm excited to the possibility of her shaking things up and giving us a fresh perspective, coming into a smaller district and knowing some of her accomplishments in a larger, coming from Brockton, how she might help us to think a little differently. I try to do it all the time. You know, I'm a parent of a child who learns differently, and I help families similar and really try always to think outside the box of how do we get from point A to point B when we might be confronted with a lot of barriers. And I feel that she's going to bring, I'm hopeful that she'll help us sort of rise to the occasion and think a little bit differently as a first step to figuring out how we can manage this budget, because the school district really has such an impact on a lot of things that go on in a town. And you educate kids, and they're excited to be here. They're going to want to come back here. They're going to want to invest in their community. People are going to want to live here. And yes, all of those things currently happen, but when we're so strained and in the next year or two, as you know, it's going to be worse. And the fatigue and all of the stresses with post-COVID, losing staff, we don't want to do that. We want to maintain our good reputation, and we want to get better. So we've got to be creative to do that.
You know, Paul, I'm listening to Kathleen and on the heels of Troy and certainly some of the other folks, and I think some of the important words that I hope folks are listening to at home, and, you know, I get the ability as an unbiased observer in this, the passion about reflection and thinking about change and process. That's so important in public education today. And it's also the most difficult thing when you're dealing with parents or students or staff members or teachers. Everyone wants a comfort zone that can be protected, and yet the real progress comes when we get uncomfortable in that comfort zone. So I think that's really awesome, Kathleen, to think about that reflection piece. I would just urge, in my view, the politics of the work ahead will be very strong and will be a big piece of how we go about funding public education and our entire town operations over the next 2 to 3 years. As I said to Paul at the outset, I think a lot of the state budget questions are very real. And I saw the article from the school committee and their feedback around some of the first Healy budget and some of the state funding. That's real in a lot of suburban communities, not just Dartmouth. And so this conversation that we're having tonight in 2023, I think will be very obvious by 2025 or 2026. And so I appreciate you and your reflective stance around that. And also, whoever is elected tonight, I hope that they have the spirit and the fight for the political world that awaits them.
I did want to ask you, Kathleen, before you go, prioritizing your advocacy for special needs students the engagement between the schools and the families, serving on the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. What's that been like, and how do you view going forward in these areas, confronted with the budgetary challenges and some other challenges that are ahead?
Yeah, I think I have a lens that allows me to think about, all of our learners. So I'm involved through my work with helping kids with disabilities. It's my life's passion. And, I've always seen sort of the level of need that my own family has, my own son has. I've always seen some of the things that he needed to succeed as being things that we can implement more universally, flexible seating, things that we're seeing in the classroom now. I've always had the mindset, I know that my son has significant challenges, but it's not about my son. It's about bringing in families and building trust and recognizing all of the needs. So whether your child is impaired significantly to the degree that my son is and our family, or if you are you're having some challenges around your social, emotional, mental health, your mental well-being, because you don't feel that you're able to reach, an academic level that maybe you have some executive functioning discrepancies, so it's not reflective in your work and you're feeling down on yourself. I feel that some of the things that my family needs are things that overarchingly can help all the children. So it's about, I go off on a tangent, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
But it's just,
Well,
passionate.
I find that interesting because, so in other words, an accommodation that somebody maybe at a distance would think would fit a particular student might fit a lot of other students in other areas that you wouldn't think about unless you really dug deep and looked at
we
it.
learned that post-COVID, right? That was a very challenging time. I was right stuck in the mud with all of you. It was a challenging time from morning, noon, and night. Night was day, day was night. It was awful. But it really showed us, and we're seeing it now, children coming into the school, families not necessarily at a younger age having the same experience that I had or other families had in early intervention, and perhaps not getting diagnosed, and families not understanding the difference of their child's development level or behavioral health level going into preschool, whereas perhaps pre-COVID and years ago, early intervention would really set you up for success and support your family, and it's more of a family plan, and then you go into the school department and you're on an IEP, say, or just entering as a preschool. We're seeing kids come in that aren't diagnosed, that don't have the supports in place, and it's only getting more difficult. So it's just,
Right.
yeah.
I think the tendency, Mike, sometimes is people off in the distance, and it's just the human nature, maybe have an off-the-cuff opinion from a distance.
Yeah.
But until you get in the weeds and start digging deep and looking into, the specifics of an issue, then it's much harder than it is to have an off-the-cuff distance kind of an approach or an opinion.
Yeah, I couldn't say that any better, Paul. People don't know what they don't know, right? We tend to, I'm going to be 47, right? So I have a lot of opinions about a lot of things. But at the end of the day, if you don't work in the schools every day, if you're not engulfed in that work, you miss things, right? It's not the same environment that it was 35 years ago when I was 12. Kids, as we've talked about, come in with very different social emotional experiences that teachers and teaching assistants and school-based administrators need to deal with. That work is different than the student who just misbehaved and gets sent to the principal's office. There may be an underlying social emotional issue that needs to be uncovered. Kathleen just mentioned some of the instructional gaps and loss that has happened in a post-pandemic world. We're definitely seeing kids in 5th grade that are reading at 3rd grade levels at higher numbers, right? Or high school students that missed critical years in their middle school development. None of that takes away the responsibilities of educators, and they don't always love this part of it, but we have to meet kids where they are. So maybe that script that worked in 10th grade English 5 years ago no longer works because kids aren't ready for that class. And so we have to meet students where they are. And that's very, very difficult for our educators. It's difficult for our families and our administrators. And it creates those very difficult culture conversations around schools. I want to make a subtle point tonight as we talk about these kinds of things that I think as a community, we have to be willing to have those conversations. And that starts with the 2 folks that get elected to our school committee tonight. is going to be a difficult ride. And I think, as Troy mentioned, as now Kathleen's mentioned, positions will be different, and I don't know that an override is the answer. I certainly don't want that to be something that somebody said Mike Watson said. But I think those conversations about how we're going to move forward really matter. And it really matters, in my view, as a leader, that you come out with very clear and confident positions so that we can engage stakeholders in those discussions.
Before we let you go, because we want to look at this in a positive way too, the joy that you get, right? I mean, you're not being paid. There are hours and hours that you put in. There are difficult decisions that you have to make. You have to deal with all the issues that Mike brought up, especially going forward, money issues and how to pay the teachers and, all of that stuff that we talked about, budgetary and so forth, and special needs. But then in the end, you do have a feeling of accomplishment that you've given back to your neighbor, to your friend, your people in the town, right? So what about that? That's part of it.
And you missed reading about yourself on social media for people that don't know you. This is, whether I win back a seat, I'm excited to see people stepping up to the table to run. I think that's exciting. And before serving on the committee and moving forward, after I don't get elected or decide not to run again or feel like I've stepped aside because maybe somebody else has some better and fresh ideas, I enjoy this. I've had people come up to me today, and one woman came up, she said something really nice to me, and it really made my day because it's tough. And but this is what I do, and I want to be there for. I know how helpful folks who shared information with me and helped me navigate my path. So since the day my son, I have 3 kids, but since my 19-year-old was just 3 years old or younger even, it was like knowledge is power, and I really delved into the world of navigating resources in this community, and I'm not going to stop helping families, staff, anyone who has a question. If I can answer it, I am happy to, and you don't need to tell anybody I helped you. I just do that stuff, and I love it. My husband will be like, "You're still working?" I'm like, "Well, I've got to get back to that." But if somebody has a need or they have a question and they think I can help them, there's nothing more rewarding than to know that somebody's trusting you and that they are valuing something that you might be able, some path, some door, so opening a door for somebody to connect to meaningful resources. That's just icing on the
It's
on the
nice
cake.
to see you, Kathleen. We wish you the best of luck tonight, and thank you very much for spending some time with us here at Town Hall on our election night coverage.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Kathleen Amaral, the incumbent, seeking re-election tonight here, stopping by our election night coverage. All right, well, a lot to navigate here tonight. Mike is bringing up all the tough waters that are ahead, and you got to navigate this, and you got to navigate that, and you're being a little bit of a downer tonight, Mike.
Well, we found a way to work it in with the first 2 people, so I can't wait to see who's next on the...
And you're thinking to yourself, gee, I remember when I served. You served not on the school committee,
Right.
but you were, of course, on the select board for a number of years.
Yeah.
And certain things came up when you were sitting. I can remember.
Sure.
And I was thinking, I wonder what's Mike's going to do on this one. And you go back and forth, and sometimes you agree with the person sitting next to you, sometimes you don't. You got to navigate all that and what's right for the town and so on and so forth. So, the stuff that's coming up, they're going to have to deal with it.
I it's flashback for me when I listen to some of the candidates, for office, and again, just the luxury of being able to talk freely is so
Well, I
is
was
so
going
powerful.
to say, you're sitting here
having
like,
not been in that chair,
right?
but
You're sitting here. You like being in this chair at this
I
particular
do,
point in your career
yeah.
than the
You
other
come
chair.
in with.
Yeah.
Ideas about so much and so much work to do, and I listened to Kathleen as she wrapped up there talk about the emotional component of this work, as you strive to try and do the right things for all people, and sometimes those come in conflict
Right.
with one another, and
All right.
so
So-
she did a great job.
So hot off the press here, we have now 4 of 9 precincts reporting. Kathleen Amaral, the incumbent, 623 votes. In second place, Erica Morenci, 367. Lynn Turner in third, 349. Elizabeth Bess Coughlin in fourth place right now with 331. And Troy Tufano in 5th place at 256. So again, that is precincts 5, 1, 2 and 4 reporting. That's 4 of the 9 precincts in tonight. So it looks like, looking at that very early on, Kathleen Amaral looks like she's on her way to be reelected. It's starting to look like we're in a battle for second place here for that second spot. And again, 2 get elected tonight. So Erica Morency, 367, Lynn Turner, 349, and Elizabeth Coughlin, 331. Those 3 seem to be jockeying for that second position tonight.
Yeah, so just a quick numbers game there. It looks like it's 1, 2, 4, and 5 reporting. That's primarily in the north part of Dartmouth, so some of the more southern precincts are still to come in. My quick calculation there is around 1,826 votes that have come in. If I had to guess right now, I'd say we're running slightly ahead of the projected 14%. That'd be what my instincts are telling me here. Real close race. Kathleen seems to be off to a pretty good lead, which is certainly encouraging for her and the folks that helped to work on her campaign. But really tight in that second spot. It looks like, Coughlin with 331, Morency with 367, and Turner with 349. I mean, you're talking about 3 candidates there that are separated by 35 votes, 36 votes, and even Troy, who was with us tonight, is only slightly behind, and with some big precincts still to come in 7, 8, and 9 from South Dartmouth. So it'll be very interesting to see as some of those South Dartmouth precincts start to report whether these margins continue to hold or not. But fascinating stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see Erica Morency there in second place right now with 4 of the 9 precincts reporting, and it's really only, I believe that's 18 votes between second place and third place, and it looks like another 18 between third place and fourth place. So depending on where the votes are coming from, I know they always used to say in the old days, well, if I live in precinct 1 and precinct 5 has come in, but my precinct hasn't come in, you're hoping that people in your neighborhood are going to vote for you. If the people in your own neighborhood don't vote for you, that's probably not
That's not a good sign.
That's not a good sign.
Well, hopefully they come out.
So depending on where people live, 18 votes, you can make that up. You still have 4 precincts left here.
Yeah, so I think that's a really important point. And those precincts, as I just mentioned, are coming from the northern part of the town. The first one that we had in was precinct 5. That was here at Town Hall, and that margin was there. At that time, Lynn Turner was in 4th place when Town Hall came in. She seems to have jumped into 3rd place as precincts 1, 2, and 4 have come in. The gap is pretty close. She was behind Morency by 13 votes after the Town Hall precinct. She's now behind by 18 votes. That certainly is within a close range. So what will be interesting is these next precincts that come in, because they're likely to shift to the southern part of the community, and we'll see if that does anything to any of the numbers that we're seeing so far. But the encouraging part is a really competitive race where all 5 candidates are certainly alive as we move into the back half of the precincts coming in tonight, which is great.
I know it's been a little while since you served. You weren't on the school committee, but you were in the select board. We're talking about, 8, 10 years ago, something like that?
So I was on the select board from 2009 to 2015.
Okay, so that's getting to be a little while ago.
Yeah.
But when you look back at it now, right, did you look at this as the votes were coming in like, gee, okay, this is the northern part of town, this is the southern part of town, my friends and family hasn't come in yet, that whole thing? Do you go through that whole analysis as the election results come in?
Certainly those people that are watching at home and know me know that I was very much on top of all of the precincts.
Is that right? Oh, you had that whole thing figured out, huh?
No, I don't know if I had it figured out. I wouldn't say that,
You
but
had
I
a
think
chart,
it's definitely important that
You had a
know
pie, and it was sliced it like
I
this.
think it's
and all.
important to know where the votes are coming in from, and certainly, as you mentioned, I think it's very real. Is the precinct that you live in, it tends to be the folks that you know the best, and so you certainly want to encourage turnout in those areas. So, for me, I was certainly watching that pretty closely, as well as some of the areas maybe that I didn't know as many people. And so when you're able to see how those results came in from precincts you don't know, and I'm sure that's what the candidates are thinking right now, and I want to keep reminding them that these are 1, 2, 4, and 5. So we're Town Hall and North right now. So those folks that are living out that way may feel a certain way based on those results. Those folks that are in the South may feel differently. That's definitely a factor in local politics. You want to make sure. I know some of these candidates knocked on doors, which I think that's a huge piece. Oh, I was all over doors. I think that's a big piece of it, right? You want to make sure you try to connect with people. But again, the world is different. One of the things we talked about today was text messages and things.
Yeah, right.
10 years ago, it was Facebook pages and that kind of stuff. So I'm sure that's still an important part.
Facebook pages are behind now? Yeah.
No, I think they're there, but there's certainly other modes of social media and ways to connect with people that some of these candidates definitely used. I saw that.
Well, you know, it's interesting. First of all, the first time we met was when you came to my house.
Yes, I
We're
knocked
doing
on the
a
door.
door-to-door
Yeah,
thing, right?
hundreds of doors.
So he comes to the door. I'm like, who's this guy Watson? You know, you don't remember this, but that's the first time I met you, right?
That's awesome.
So then during this last campaign here, the one that we're dealing with tonight, several of the candidates came, and I was thinking, wow, look at that door-to-door. They used to say in the old days it is a grassroots campaign, right? Do the whole thing. So in 2023, it's still important to have a grassroots campaign. It's still important to come door-to-door.
So I think so, and I'll add that people who vote, that's a public record.
Yeah.
And anybody who's seeking office statewide should have access to those records. You can know who voted. And so if you look at the data over a several-year period, then you pretty much can gauge which people and at which address are actually voting. And if I were to encourage people to run for office, those would be the doors that I'd knock on.
See,
those
I do
people
vote.
that are likely to come.
I believe in my democracy. I'm an attorney. I fight for the Constitution every day in court. So I always vote. So my name must have landed on a list of a guy that votes all the time.
Did you say, Paul, that I came to your house?
Yeah, you did. You came
That's
to my
pretty
house.
good indication that you vote all the time.
Yeah, so
Those
you
are the
looked and you
houses wanna
said,
make
who's
sure you get
this
to.
guy Santos? I think I got to try to get
He
his
votes
vote.
all the time.
He
Let's
votes
knock on his door.
Yeah, you better knock on his door. And the other thing, too, that's interesting, right? Human nature being what it is, right? I always try to vote for the candidate. I listen to the candidate. I try to match up my views with that candidate. I also look at, what I think about them as a person, so forth like that. All those things kind of factor in. But I can remember that if somebody took the time to come to my house and say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm running, here's the pamphlet. Now, I look at the pamphlet, maybe I don't go through it with a fine-tooth comb, but I'm going to look at it quickly, right? So now, if I have it down to, say, that person and another person, and it's kind of a close call, there is a tendency to say, well, gee, this guy came to my house. This guy really wants that position. This guy took it upon himself to get in his car, drive to my neighborhood, come up, meet me, talk to me, ask me some things, and the other candidate didn't. So in a close call, I'm going to lean toward that candidate. That's just human nature, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I still think so. I mean, I definitely think a campaign in 2023 probably looks different than 2012, which is the last time that I ran.
Oh, so if you ran now, you don't know if you'd be able to
I'd be
handle
going
it.
door to door for sure, because
right?
I agree with that piece. I think that
You'd be knocking on my door.
I would be knocking on any door where the voter was likely to come out on April 4th to vote. I do think, people say, the signs don't vote or the visibilities don't
Yeah,
vote.
signs don't vote. I remember that. Yeah.
I think those are powerful things. I made sure that I had hundreds of signs out. I just think those are really important pieces for name recognition, but I agree with you. Nothing beats that experience, door-to-door, face-to-face with somebody who's on the fence how to vote.
Well, I remember just a funny story. You came to my house and you said, hi, I'm Mike Watson, I'm running, and I talked to you for a few minutes. You left, So then you ended up getting elected. So then I put on, every once in a while I check in, let's see what's going on with the select board. So I'm like, oh, there's that guy that came to my house.
That's right.
So your claim to fame was, that's the guy that came to my house. So, but then,
Awesome
of course, your very impressive resume spoke for itself after that.
I don't know about my resume.
We all know
I
that.
think you voted for me because I came to your house. We haven't concluded that yet, but maybe in 2025 we can visit that question.
That's about as much effort as I put into that, huh? That's the guy that came to my house.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's take a look at the list again here. Kathleen Amaral, the incumbent, with 4 of 9 precincts reporting in the lead at 623 so far tonight. In second place, we have Erica Morency at 367. 18 votes behind that, Lynn Turner, 349. 18 votes behind that, if I've added it up correctly, Elizabeth Beth Coughlin at 331, and Troy Tufano coming in right now at 256. So it'll be interesting to see. It looks like right now, early on, I think it's pretty safe to say that Kathleen Amaral, the incumbent, in good shape right now to be reelected. It looks like that second position is going to be the one that we're going to have to see who gets in here tonight. But I got to tell you, I had the opportunity to deal with the candidates forum, and I was impressed with all the candidates. I mean, I thought all the candidates did a really, really nice job. Okay, we got one more precinct in. Precinct 3 came in.
That's the last one that was sitting out in the North Dartmouth area.
All right, so let's run it down. Kathleen Amaral at 346. Erica Morency at 379. We have Bess Coughlin at 345. Lynn Turner, actually Troy Tufano now, moved up to 264, and Lynn Turner, that's actually, Lynn Turner is 358. Okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay, so 358 for Lynn Turner. So it's up on the screen right there. You can see right there, Erica Morency second, and now it looks like we still have Lynn Turner third and Elizabeth Coughlin fourth, but very close.
Still a really tight race, as all of the North Dartmouth precincts have now come in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It looks like Erica Morency has just expanded that lead by a couple of votes. I think she's up 21 votes over the third place Lynn Turner, and then just what looks like about 34 votes over Elizabeth Coughlin, and 115 votes over Troy Tufano. But again, I'm going to say that I think we're moving towards the southern part of the town now, and we'll definitely see more votes coming in, precincts 6, 7, 8, and 9. At very quick look, we want to take a look and see what this means for total votes, because that'll give us a little bit of an indication in terms of where we're heading for overall precincts. So whether we'll see that 14% turnout or not. Certainly, it's looking like the numbers are coming in as expected to where Sarah had projected, 14% turnout, but we're going to have to take a look at those numbers a little over the next couple of minutes and see where we're at.
Yeah, it's still very close. As we said, Erica Morency in second place, and then Lynn Turner in third place, and then Elizabeth Coughlin in fourth place. So it looks like a 21 vote difference between second and third place. And is that 13 votes between third and fourth?
Yeah, it looks like somewhere around there, 13 votes.
Yeah, so that's very, very close. So now you're doing
I'm
you're
just
doing some
scribbling
math over
some
here.
really quick, trying to get us zero. It looks like we've got about 1,000 people or so that have voted.
You did that the old-fashioned way. You
I
didn't
did it
get
the
out
old-fashioned
You didn't
way.
get out a calculator
Looks like we're
or
getting
anything
some
like
new
that.
numbers
We
here.
got some new numbers. Now we've got 6 of 9 precincts reporting. Let's put that up on the screen. Kathleen Amaral, 931. We have Erica. Oh, wait a minute. Let's make that Elizabeth Coughlin has now taken over second place with 494 votes. Erica Morency in third with 483. We have Lynn Turner in fourth with 450, and Troy Tufano in fifth place at 368. So a flip-flop there, as Bess Coughlin has now taken over second place ahead of Erica Morency for the time being.
I would say, as again, these are precincts, well, it appears to be precincts 6 and 7 that are coming in, leaving 8 and 9 still out. 8 and 9 tend to be the highest voting precincts, or that has been the historical average. So I think we're going to see a large number of votes still coming in for precinct 8 and 9. Kathleen is still with us here out in the audience. Kathleen, I feel pretty good about where you are right now as you look at those numbers with 931 votes in. You have a pretty comfortable margin heading into the 2 most populated precincts in the town, but it's going to be close here down the stretch.
So it's 6, 8, and 9 that are left over, actually.
Okay.
6, 8, and 9.
So
6 of 9 reporting.
I see. So 6 has not come in. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7.
That is
That
correct.
have come in.
So
So
6,
we're waiting
8,
on
and 9.
3 precincts, likely the 2 most populated ones, 8 and 9, in terms of votes coming in. And then precinct 6 will have a good turnout as well. So it's going to be a fascinating finish. I think it really could go in any number of directions based upon where people are.
It looks like Lynn Turner has slipped just a little bit further behind the other 2. And that could change, of course, because we have 3 precincts that could, flip that again. But right now, it looks like Kathleen Amaral is going to be reelected. I think we can say that pretty comfortably.
You're
But-
making projections now, Paul.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a first
Yeah,
for
that's
us
right.
on the
BCTV projects.
I mean, Paul has never made a projection at this point in the broadcast. It might be early.
Yeah, that's really going out on a limb there, right? Look at that number way up in the sky there. But in second place, right, Bess Coughlin at 494 and Erica Morency at 483, a difference of just 11 votes. It feels right now that second spot is probably going to go between Coughlin or Morency.
Yeah, and I wouldn't count Lynn Turner out either at this point.
Still within reach.
She's about 44 votes behind, whereas Elizabeth Coughlin is right now. But again, my hunch is that precincts 8 and 9 are going to have the highest number of voters when this is all done. So once we see what 8 or 9 or 8 and 9 look like, we're going to be in a much different position.
Well, they used to say this is a real horse race tonight here.
This
the way
is
it's
this
going.
is close, and I think that's really awesome. So while we're at that moment, let me just say again how proud I am as a taxpayer of these 5 folks who have stepped up and look to be in a really, even Troy Tufano, who was on earlier, is 126 votes down at this point, and there are probably more than 1,000 voters out there in precincts 6, 8, and 9 left. That'd be my guess. So somewhere around that number. So he's still alive. It's definitely in a, he's trailing the pack by a little bit, but certainly not an insurmountable number at this point. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this wraps up. But what I was going to say is just a really encouraging sign for all 5 candidates, in my opinion. There's clearly a base of support for all of them out there in those folks that came out to vote today. And especially if we look at a second-place finish that's decided by 20 or 30 votes. That should, even if you're on the short side of that tonight, I hope that motivates folks to stay engaged in the conversation and to think about 2024. So we'll see.
I have to say, we always say it all the time, and I know it's redundant and everything else, but anybody that throws their hat in the ring to try to win a job, especially a not compensated job, that's going to result in many, many late, thankless hours, they should be commended. And, as I said, I had the opportunity to be here as the moderator during the candidates forum, and a lot of the candidates I had met and saw for the first time, and I thought, wow, we got a very nice array of candidates here tonight. Even candidates, when they disagreed, there was a lot of respectful disagreement and stuff like that. So I thought it was real good. I thought the candidates all did a nice job. And one of the interesting parts of the night was not only Troy Tufano saying books should never be banned. That certainly got a little reaction out of the crowd.
Yep.
I think it was the news director of WBSM asked a question, and the question was, after you vote for yourself, I imagine you're going to vote for yourself, who do you think should go on with you? So that got this groan out of the crowd. Everybody went like, oh, So I was joking with the WBSM news director. I said, hey, you had to ask the question. I got a groan. That's a good thing, So of course the candidate said, well, and they answered the question. However they answered the question, but that was an opportunity to see. Okay, now you're under the gun a little bit. How are you going to answer this question? And of course, Mike Watson, you would have said, well, they're all great.
I would have tried to find. That would have been a tough question to answer. Boy, I don't know how you want to handle that. But Kathleen mentioned tonight too, and again, just to the thanks point is, these are hard positions. These are uncompensated positions. You get to read about yourself on social media, which is always fantastic. The best advice I have for those folks is, kind of just keep scrolling. Because that's not, you don't want to engage as a public official or as a leader in online dialogue. So that was always my practice as a select board member. Certainly my practice as the superintendent. I do not engage in those kind of formats. So
you don't look at it at all?
I didn't look at it at all before. I definitely don't look at it now. I don't think those are winning arguments. People will call if they have those conversations, and I just hope that the folks that are tonight running for these seats and are likely going to see feedback on social media, you should be very proud about what you did and putting yourself out here for people to weigh in on, and just keep scrolling right past it, because you did what a lot of people didn't do, and that's get signatures, get your name on the ballot, campaign for an office, and offer to serve the community. And so that would be my advice to all of those.
Well, let's put the graphic back up there if we could, in case you're just tuning in. Kathleen Amaral looking like she is going to get reelected tonight, but the second place finisher also gets a spot on the school committee. And right now it is Elizabeth Coughlin in second place, overtaking Erica Morency as we got the results coming in, but by a very small margin, 494 to Morency's 483, a difference of 11 votes. Then you have Lynn Turner down there next with 450, about 44 votes down from the third place finisher, and then Troy Tufano with 368. But as Mike said, over 1,000 votes still to go, with precincts 7, 8, and 9 still due to come in here tonight. And you talk about people on the sidelines. If you're on the sidelines, hey, we've all been on the sidelines. You can kind of say, hey, this guy and this this person doesn't know what they're talking about and all that. And a lot of times when you get more information, you're like, oh, wait a minute, maybe there's more to it than I thought. So it is true. When you have, the more information you have, the harder the decision is, right? It's easy to make a decision when you don't have to go through, the nooks and crannies of the issue. So there's no question about that. Remember the old Teddy Roosevelt quote, one of my favorite quotes about how, you'd rather be in the arena, with bloodied face and thing, than to sit there on the sideline, those timid souls that didn't want to go in the arena,
Yeah, you're going to have to take public positions. So when you're on a school committee or anywhere else, you're going to be doing what we're doing right now, having a conversation with the TV cameras rolling, and people are going to know where you stand on it. That's very easy when you're not there. It's much more difficult when there are 100 people standing in the audience looking back and listening to every word, and that that they're going to return home and get their 2 cents out there on the platform. So like we've been talking about, Paul, really competitive races. I look at these numbers, and assuming that every voter voted for 2 people, we've probably seen 1,300 or 1,400 votes cast so far. If there are another 1,000 out there, and that remains to be seen, or close to 1,000, we're only about 60% or so in. So this really is still wide open if what my instincts are thinking in terms of turnout based upon what we see and what's been typical here. There's still a lot of room. So I jotted those numbers down for that first 6 precincts. We'll see as 6, 8, 9 come in, how many votes that actually is and how it compares with what we've seen when we wrap up tonight to see how accurate that projection is.
Right, 6, 8, and 9 are still due to come in. Now, geographically, right, you know where 6, 8, and 9
So
are?
if they are in the same places, and of course I knew that question was coming the more I talked about that, 6 used to be at the Council on Aging building. I'm not in 6,
all right.
But it was the Bliss Corner area. 8 was at the Southworth Library. That tends to be the most populated one. And 9 has shifted over the years. It's at Council on Aging now with 6. Okay, so for a long time that was.
So that's in the southern part of town.
It is, yeah. All of those are in the southern.
What
part
does
of
that
town.
mean? Is there any significance to that?
So
Do people in the south vote differently than the
No,
north?
I don't
or
know if
not
they.
really?
I don't know. So again, I think where people live, and I don't know where all 5 of these people actually live. That could be a factor. We'll see. I think the interesting part is, and again, you have to assume that people went and voted for 2 people. That didn't happen. There were definitely some voters who showed up today and only voted for 1.
Well, right, because they used to call it a plunker.
That's right.
Yes.
They voted for their candidate and in a way helped their
Strengthened.
candidate more than once
Right.
because they didn't vote for somebody else. So when you add up the numbers of what we've seen so far from the 6 precincts, and I'm doing it quickly so it's not perfect, you're somewhere around 2,600 votes, 25, 26, 27. So that you divide it by 2, assuming that 13 or 1,400 people have voted. It's likely in those 3 outstanding precincts that we're somewhere near 1,000. That'd be my guess, somewhere in that area, maybe even a little bit better than that. So, and it looks like we're going to get that information right
All
now.
right, let's see what we have here, hot off the press. 9 of
in.
9, they are all in. So Kathleen Amaral is reelected with 1972, and joining her on the school committee is going to be Bess Coughlin, who really picks up a strong showing in those last few precincts as she overtakes Erica Morency, 1,268 votes. We have Lynn Turner with 837, Erica Morency 791, and Troy Tufano 604. So actually, a lot of these candidates jumbled up between Coughlin, Morency, and Turner down the stretch, but it is Elizabeth Coughlin, Bess Coughlin, who is elected tonight to the school committee.
So, as we were just talking about, when you take a look at these numbers, you saw Kathleen at the first 6 precincts had 931 votes. She finished with 1972. So those last precincts generated 1,000 additional votes for Kathleen. And when you look at Bess Coughlin, who was up by just 11 votes when we went through the first 6 precincts, saw her lead and her finish grow pretty significantly by over 430 votes. So you saw a big jump there. She had 494 votes at the first 6 precincts. She finished with 1,268. So that's another 800, just shy of 800 votes. So as I mentioned a few times tonight, those last 3 precincts, we're going to bring in significant numbers. I think it's better. It's clearly better than 1,000. It's clearly better than 1,000
Yes.
votes that were cast.
You
in
can
those,
tell,
in
'cause
those
the numbers-
last 3.
the numbers
The
have
numbers
shot
went
way
right
up.
through the roof. Even Lynn Turner, who had 450 votes and was in 4th place, jumped into 3rd place by picking up nearly 400 votes in those last 3 precincts. And so a lot of people voted in precincts 6, 8, and 9, and when those unofficial tallies are put up on the website and you were able to see the actual breakdown, you're going to find that those last 3 precincts reported generated well over 1,000 votes collectively.
So congratulations to Kathleen Amaral. She is reelected to the school committee tonight. We thank her for stopping by our election night coverage. Bess Coughlin coming in 2nd place, and she is elected to the school committee tonight. So I'm sure they're celebrating her and her family as she is now going to be a member of the school committee with 1,268 votes. And the remaining candidates, certainly much to be proud of, as Mike said before, not only throwing your hat in the ring, but as you can tell from looking at this, all candidates had a good base of support. You see right there, Lynn Turner, 837 votes tonight. Erica Morency, 791. Troy Tufano, 604. So all candidates had a good showing of support tonight. And again, we congratulate them for putting the hat in the ring. But it's going to be Kathleen and Amaral that are going to have to deal with all that stuff that you talked about before and all these issues they're going to have to deal with. And they're the ones that are going to be on the committee.
Yeah, for Kathleen, I mean, she's been in the arena now for 2 terms, going on a 3rd. So she certainly is going to be well-versed to deal with some of the political realities we've been talking about tonight. And for Bess, it's going to be quite an experience. And it'll be a very different role than being involved in town government in a different capacity. The challenges will be very real for suburban districts, school districts over the next several years. That's certainly something we've been talking about all night. And I just want to congratulate the winners, those who threw their hat in the ring here tonight, and I hope that all stay engaged in these very important conversations around public education in Dartmouth.
Now, of course, as we sit here and we're going through the election night results, I know you're harking back to the days when you were waiting to see who was going to vote for Mike Watson, right? So what is that like when you're a candidate, whether you end up winning, not winning? It's disappointing when you don't, obviously happy when you do, but, just the excitement of waiting for the results to come in. I mean, that's a real thing, right?
Oh, yeah. And a sense of relief when you get to this point if you were able to get elected, because it's a lot of work, and all 5 of the candidates I know put in a great deal of effort, and so unfortunately, when there's 5 people for 2 spots, you can have 2 people that win and 3 people that don't win. And so, yeah, that feeling is real. These people have all put their heart and soul into trying to make a statement for Dartmouth and deserve to be commended for that. And the high of the win is definitely a real feel that I'm sure Kathleen and Bess are feeling tonight.
All right, so we're going to meet back here a year from today, are we?
1 year from now, I'll be back, the first Tuesday in April.
Every time I come in and I see you, I think, was it a whole year?
It was a whole year. I know, it's
we're
crazy.
Here? I can't believe it.
It's a crazy thing.
Maybe we should do something the night of the presidential election just for fun.
Just for fun. Boy, we could get in a lot of trouble that night. I don't know.
You got to kind of navigate through that one. All right, let's run the numbers one final time. Kathleen Amaral, the incumbent, is reelected tonight. 1,972 votes. Elizabeth Bess Kauflin comes in second, but she is elected onto the school committee tonight since 2 are elected. 1,268 votes. In third place, Lynn Turner misses at 837. Erica Morenci finishing 4th at 791. And Troy Tufano, 604. And we're getting some updated calculations over here,
yeah,
Mike.
they did a great job coming in. So it looks like just shy of 3,000 voters, 2,967 votes that were cast. Those last 3 precincts we've been talking about around 1,000. It looks like at very quick glance 660, and it looks like 1,270, about 1,480 votes. So those last 3 precincts easily surpassed the first 6 precincts in vote totals. And so as we were watching those numbers come in, I just think that's a really important piece. And for those candidates that didn't win tonight but might be thinking about 2024, and those candidates that are out in the audience maybe thinking about that run, this is all going to be public information, and I would encourage you, as you're serious about getting your views articulated in a governing platform, that you start to think about ways to do that.
I know Sarah Hasker-Aruda, who is the town clerk, she was hoping for predicting around 14%. I don't know if you can tell from that. I mean, I know it's a difficult calculation.
Yeah, so it does, and again,
around there, you think?
So 3,000, if we use a round number of 3,000, and assuming everybody voted twice, that's 1,500 votes, 1,500 people that voted, because you remember these people voted, more than, presumably for two candidates. That wouldn't be a huge number. She's probably in the ballpark, maybe a little high on that number. But again, we don't know if that was everybody voting once or twice.
Right.
So we'll have to wait to find out what that total calculation will be. It certainly looks like it'll be in that range.
I see your pen working over here. You did all this in your head, right? That's pretty good.
You got to,
you
got to.
The old school, you're carrying the one and and borrowing from the other column and the whole thing.
I got to
right?
do it every day at work, and certainly in my political experiences, you got to be able to run numbers quickly in your head.
Guy's not the superintendent of vote for nothing.
You
here.
don't
I can tell you
accidentally
that
trip
right
into
now.
that stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for watching here tonight, our election coverage. I take the opportunity also to thank Mike Watson. Always great working with you, and
You
we'll
too, Paul.
we'll see you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right, I'm Paul Santos. All of us here at Dartmouth Community Media. Congratulations again to the winners, and that, of course, is the re-election of Kathleen Amaral and Elizabeth Kauflin, elected tonight. Good night from Town Hall.